Does this have the potential to help ease some tensions between the two countries? I mean, it, along with a handful of other countries, remains on the monitoring list, but they did conclude that the criteria simply wasn't there.
That's correct. They did conclude the criteria wasn't there. They had to make that judgment under a legal framework. And had they concluded that it was there and China was a currency manipulator, that certainly would have escalated tensions. Here, this probably won't change it one way or the other. A lot of observers didn't expect them to label them a currency manipulator, giving the legal framework that had to be met, and they didn't. The report did, however, warn China that it would be watching the yuan carefully and watching Chinese currency transactions, especially after a recent yuan devaluation. The report also said that the People's Bank of China's interventions into the market hadn't been significant, but again, it also took China to task for its economic model, warning that it could pose a risk to global growth. So certainly didn't spare China completely, but it did not name China a currency manipulator, which, again, was somewhat expected.
Greg, does this tell us anything about the split between the hardliners, the trade hawks, if you will, in the administration, and those maybe looking at a more pragmatic or conciliatory approach, and which camp might be prevailing at the moment?
Well, one thing that's interesting is that Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin is seen as someone who seeks a more conciliatory approach within the administration. He had been under pressure to name China a currency manipulator, but again, they didn't meet that framework. What's interesting here, though, is that the Treasury is following a procedure, but it stands in stark contrast to President Trump, who himself has accused China of manipulating their currency. He has actually said that China is manipulating their currency. And then here he has his Treasury Department saying that, well, it doesn't quite meet the legal threshold. So certainly the administration is still looking for ways to ramp up pressure on China, not necessarily signaling that they're backing down from their economic confrontations. But at least on this front, China is getting a pass, even though this would not have triggered immediate penalties.
Yeah, on another front, though, ramping up pressure. I mean, they are trying to withdraw from this 144-year-old treaty that gives Chinese companies a better rate. What do we know so far?
Well, we know that the Trump administration is submitting a notice of withdrawal today. They are withdrawing from this 192-country treaty that, like you said, gives China better rates on shipping for small packages, including to America. The White House said that they had tried to renegotiate the treaty, but were rebuffed by other countries, and so plan to submit their notice of withdrawal. Now, this process is set to take a year, under which negotiations can continue. Officials said that rates shouldn't change within the next 6 months, and White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders seemed to leave the door open that they could rescind that notice of withdrawal if further negotiations were to their liking. But definitely another escalation on the economic front towards China. Business groups largely praising it, but definitely another move against China there.